Hello, bonjour, hello, hi, heya, and privyet, hockey fans. Welcome back to the Europuck podcast, the show where two Brits talk all things European hockey as part of the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Hayden, or Oddman Rush, as you can see up there, and joining me, of course, once again, if you weren't expecting him to be here at this point, you really haven't paid attention for the last 3 months, it's, of course, Chris Gadsby. Hey, Chris.
Hello.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's not going well. I was about to say it's not going well. Then, yeah, it's not going badly. Yeah, no,
it's absolutely terrible, and the world is burning.
But believe it or not, this week marks a year I've been in this house.
Oh, congratulations!
So,
1 year anniversary of the Gadsby household.
Technically it's tomorrow. Yeah. Or Wednesday as this goes out. But yeah, I bet you can remember, the 2 weeks where I had no internet, where you had to go on about the Boston Bruins on your own.
Yes, I remember them very fondly, Chris, when we were doing our previous show on the network, Brits on Bruins. And yeah, it was like, Chris said, Hayden, by the way, I'm not going to be here for 2 weeks because I'm moving house. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then I ended up sitting down and recording. I was like, oh God, this is more difficult when it's just one of you sitting there, isn't it?
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And
but there's not one of us this week. In fact, there's not even going to be two of us. There's going to be 3 people this week.
Do you want to tease it, Chris? Go on. I'll give you the honours. Go on.
Well, we've teased it a bit on our social media channels, so if you've been following us on social media, you'll already know who our guest is today. Probably, I would easily say that the most high-profile guest we've had on so far on the Europuck podcast. We have a current player, a former Elite League player, Cardiff Devils player, now over with Graz 99ers, and Team Great Britain current netminder, one and only. All British hockey fans will probably look at him with adoring eyes. It's Mr. Ben Bowns is our guest this evening on the Europuck podcast, and we've got so much to chat to him about.
I've got to be completely honest, Chris. I've been excited about this all day. I've been sitting here from the moment I woke up, and I was like, I'm going to get the chance to interview Ben Bowns later on today, and I'm going to get to talk to him and kind of get his opinions and his perspective on so many of Great Britain and the Elite League's fantastic moments over the last sort of 5-6 years. Obviously, he's now playing in Austria with the Graz 99ers, so he's going to be an hour ahead of us, but he was very kindly offered to sit down with us. Maybe the fact that he's out with an injury at the moment gave him a bit of extra time, and it was kind of like, oh, why not? Let's go on the Europuck podcast. Let's have a good time. So we're very fortunate to have Ben Bowns come on the show in a moment. We're actually going to go talk to him in about 15 minutes' time as we're recording this. So I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm super excited. Like, what are your thoughts when you hear you're going to get to interview Ben Bowns?
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange one because see him in one of my freelance jobs, I just get to interview Panthers players at the end of each game.
Yeah.
But kind of in that situation, it's all kind of very professional, of course, and the players are still kind of visibly sweating after being on the ice.
Yeah.
And we're talking about that specific game. But in this situation, obviously, where it's much more relaxed and everything, it's much more like a conversation, which is still new to me. So whilst you're kind of talking to active hockey players is kind of not really anything new to me. And, I've spoken to Ollie Betteridge, Rob Lakovic, that sort of, the player on the Panthers. To speak to Ben Bowns, it is something else. And I've got several bones to pick with him about how good his goaltending was after I'd walked 50 minutes in the rain at Cardiff to go and see them in the cold big blue tent, to then for Cardiff to beat Nottingham 7-2 and then me to walk 50 minutes back in the cold in winter.
But I mean, Chris, I think it's fair to say the Europuck podcast is also a very professional endeavour as well. Let's make that clear here, folks, that the Europuck podcast, very professional also. We're not professional. We are professional, but we're not professional, if you know what I mean.
We are, but what I mean is that when I'm doing stuff for the BBC,
of course.
It's all formal on the BBC. Here's a microphone in your face.
Oh, absolutely. We're just two guys just chatting, just talking with guys. And I feel like both elements are so important to getting the best or getting the most out of players, getting that raw reaction from those guys. That's so important. But also getting the chance to talk about the wider career of these players and kind of like, he's very kindly like come on to talk to us on this show. He didn't have to do that. Like,
Oh yeah.
like he was very much like, oh yeah, like I'd love to. We dropped him a DM. We slid into his DMs, you know, and he was like, yeah, why not? Like, let me know when you want me on.
That's the difference as well, because when I'm speaking to players after a game, I speak to the coach and then I say, yeah, can I speak to this player? And they kind of have to come out and talk to me.
Yeah.
Even if they've had like the worst game and they're really not happy. Whereas Ben, we can just sit back, have a laugh. And this should be a very good episode of the Europuck podcast. So sit back and enjoy this one.
Absolutely. And I mean, the year 2020, what people need more of in this abysmal year is the chance to just sit back, relax, and have a little chat about better years gone by, you know? So, so enough rambling from us. Let's play the interview that we have with Ben Bowns. So enjoy, folks. So as you can see, Chris and I are joined by a very special guest here on the Europuck podcast this week. We've obviously mentioned who he is in our intro, and I've got to be honest, Chris and I are fanboying here a little bit, to be perfectly honest. We have the one, the only Ben Bowns. Ben, hello, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. How are you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too bad.
Good, thanks. Yeah,
I mean, I'm doing great.
How are you settling into new life on the continent?
No, it's been good. It's definitely an experience, a bit of a life experience. But would be nice if I was still playing. But it is what it is. Obviously, Corona's kind of made it a bit more of a watered down version of the European experience. But it's just it's nice to have a job and still have a chance to come back and play hopefully this year.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to ask, obviously you're out there in Austria now. You dealt with a bit of a rough injury to start the year. I thought the kind of first big question we should ask you is like, how's your recovery going? Because I'm sure there's a lot of Devils fans back home that are wanting to know that Ben Bowns is okay. So let us know how you're doing at the moment, Ben.
Well, it's going all right. I mean, tomorrow's a big day because it's 8 weeks since I did it. So it's going to have all its stress test tomorrow, and that's when I should find out whether I need surgery or not, hopefully, unless something's got lost in translation last time I went there. But no, as far as I know, I should find out tomorrow exactly what's going to go on, and it's either really good news or not so great news for me. But no, I'm feeling pretty positive about it. I can do a lot of things on that knee that in my opinion, if I needed surgery, I wouldn't be able to do. So it seems pretty stable. It seems to heal pretty well, and it feels strong at the minute. It's still not quite the same as my other leg, but my knee's still locked at 90 degrees, so I can't get that full range of motion in it yet. But once that brace has changed to full range tomorrow, and then the plan is to lose the brace on the 2nd of December, and then we'll go from there. But obviously things could change tomorrow either way.
In kind of the best case scenario, do you have any kind of time scale for getting back on the ice and suiting up?
No, it'd be nice to say I've got a time scale or an idea. It'd definitely be better for my mental state knowing if I had a time scale. But no, it's one of those injuries where, especially as a goaltender with the positions we have to get in, I don't want to come back unless I'm like 200% certain that everything's fine and I'm confident. I don't want to come back and have to wear a brace because I can't really. Well, I know goalies that do wear braces, but I don't want to be wearing a brace. I don't want to rely on a brace. I want my leg as it should be. But at the same time, I don't want to come back and get injured straight away or be in a position where I'm in that net thinking, crap, is it going to give way? Can I get down into this position comfortably and end up not putting everything into a save and obviously conceding more than what I should be? So it's both ways. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to come back before the end of the regular season and into the pick round in the playoffs here.
Because obviously you're not just thinking about the end of this season, you're thinking about your career several years down the line, obviously. So you're I would imagine, given the situation that you're in and kind of going through the rehab and looking at your different options, you're thinking about the long term and not just as a player, but your health in general, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Because obviously, you only get one career. You don't want to make it any shorter than what it already is. The big thing, obviously, short term. In terms of this season, obviously, I didn't have the best of pre-seasons. A lot of adjusting, a lot of new little additions to my game that took a little bit of time, and then the old habits fight with your new habits and stuff like that. So, yeah, a bit of a mixed bag pre-season. But then the 3 games, well, the 2 games in half a period that I played in the actual season went pretty well. and it felt like I were building. So I mean, the short term, it'd just be nice to obviously make an appearance again this year, and because I would like to be back here. That's pretty well known. But I just like that to be in my hands. Basically, I don't want to end up not coming back because you're injured. You want to, if they're not going to have me back, I want to at least have a say in it, not lose this opportunity because of some stupid injury that obviously is pretty unfortunate. But at the same time, it'll do me a lot of good just to come back and then be able to say, well, do you want me back or not?
Yeah. I mean, you, as say, you've had time off. We've got a first fan question from Banners on the Wall, who says, have you managed to get addicted to Manor wafers yet?
Definitely. Do you say wafers?
Yeah, Manor wafers.
No idea. No idea what or what that is.
Right, that'll be a no then.
I mean, add it onto the list. Add it onto the list. Why not? So the next kind of big question I have for you, and you've obviously mentioned it when you announced that you were moving to Austria to go and join the Graz 99ers, but I think a big question a lot of, especially Cardiff Devils fans might be thinking is, why did you choose to go to Graz specifically? Obviously, there was a lot of uncertainty at the time as to whether the Elite League would be playing, and obviously they're still not at the moment. So in the grand scheme of things, it was probably the right decision if you wanted to keep playing for this season. But what kind of led you to choose the Graz 99ers as the team you wanted to play for the 2021 season?
Well, if you go back a few years even, I mean, there's been quite a lot of interest from the EIHL. It was obviously, now it's the EIHL. So I've been in contact with quite a few teams over the last few years in this league, and it's a league that I obviously wanted to that I targeted myself as one of my targets to get to, and I thought it was a good stepping stone. It's one of the better ones in Europe, and it puts you right in a good spot in the middle of Europe to obviously progress to the other leagues. Everyone's close when you actually get into Europe. There were a few things from the DEL last year. The year before that, there were an opportunity that were close thinking the NLA, which would have been ridiculous. But no, I think what people don't realise in Britain, that because the UK teams sign players after the season's finished, they don't realise that in Europe they actually sign the players December, January, February time. So I'd actually signed with Graz like the end of February, early March time, which made the end of the season even more good. And obviously, when you've been somewhere for that long and we've won what we've had and achieved what we've achieved, I wanted to go out with a bit of a bang. I wanted to win, well, basically go out a Grand Slam. And the last game we played with a Challenge Cup final, which didn't exactly go very well for us. So, yeah, that was a bit of a nightmare. But I'm pretty certain we would have won that league within a week or so with how all the games are going now we were playing. So it's even more gutting to obviously end my career so far today in Cardiff and in the Elite League in that way. But as for Graz, I mean, we'd had the experience here in the CHL. The rink's amazing. You knew the setup was awesome as well. I got a good friend here, the trainer, the kit guy, David Owen, or Dees as people know him as. So obviously I stayed in contact with him, and it helps when someone can vouch for you as well. The coaches here do the research and ask for the players that they know that you've played with and stuff like that. But obviously just having Dees on the ground in Graz, I'm sure was a big help for me and for them to obviously get some info on me as a person as well as a goalie. I mean, they've played against me and they've watched me. They'll know exactly what I'm like talent-wise, but not so much personality-wise. So I think that was a big help. And yeah, when they made the offer, it was pretty much a no-brainer. So before a few tweaks in the contract either way, but nothing major really. It was pretty straightforward once they sent the first offer. Apart from spelling my name wrong, they give me a Browns rather than Bounds, but that's what everyone does. But yeah, no, it's a great setup here. It's an awesome city, to be fair. It's one of my favourite cities I've ever been to, especially now that we're getting to live here and explore it a bit more. It's absolutely awesome. But yeah, so once they come in with that offer, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And I said to one of the guys once before, when I moved to Europe, I expected to be a bit more of a lower league or a lower-end team. And when a team and a club like Graz approaches you to play in a league like this, for a club like this, it's pretty much a no-brainer. You'd be stupid to turn it down, really.
Yeah, and the team doing very well so far this season.
Yeah. Ever since they got injured.
Wasn't going to mention that bit. So go right back to the start. How did you decide to become a netminder?
Well, it's people have heard me say this a million times now, but the first game I ever watched was Steelers Devils, and right from that game, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the kit, the mass. I don't really know. Just always wanted to be a goalie, and my parents thought it'd be a bit of a fad like kids go through, and maybe in 6 weeks I'd give it up. And back then there wasn't any tiered goalie equipment. It was you bought basically what the pros were wearing pretty much, whether you were 5, 6, 7, 8, or 25, 26, 27, 28. So it were all the same price and everything. So yeah, they bought me a player's kit. And I can remember my grandma used to have a picture on the wall that said spring 97, I was out of school as a player, and summer 97, I was as a goalie. So I can remember them taking me house leagues, and I used to end up in front of the goalie making saves or behind him trying to clear stuff off at line. So I think my parents just thought, well, if he's going to do it in player's kit, we might as well buy him the proper stuff so it's protected.
Interesting. So talk about your time in the Elite League. Obviously, you were in the Elite League for a very long time. You started with where you saw your ice time kind of grow with Hull before you then obviously moved to Cardiff. What are the kind of big memories you have when, obviously it's not that long ago that you left the Elite League, but you know, now you're in a different place, you kind of have the chance to reflect on your Elite League career. What are the kind of things that jump out to you as memories that really make you think of the Elite League fondly?
I think my very first memory that always sticks out to mind is it was actually when I was playing for the Scimitars in the EPL. My first year in the EPL, I was playing for GB20s against the Scimitars, and I can remember Matty Davis and Craig Mitchell back then telling me that that Sylvan, so that Klutz and I think it was Katie Suppy were coming to watch me that game. I think they were struggling that year, and they'd heard about me and stuff like that. And I'm like, I should have that. Not real. And then I can remember coming out for the game and seeing them sat to my left in the Stingrays jackets, thinking, "Oh crap!" Like they were being serious here. So I think that's the first thing. The fact that Klutz obviously put that time to come to Sheffield on a winter's night just to watch an under-20s game against the Scimitars. So that's my very first one. And yeah, I mean, I was training with them for the next 2.5 years, traveling back and forth from Hull before getting that full-time contract. I remember we actually backed up in Cardiff. It's weird how everything seems to fall back to Cardiff. Obviously, the first game I watched, and then the first game I backed up for Hull was in Cardiff, I believe. And we're actually walking into McDonald's after the game. I think they won in a shootout. And Klutz and Bobby McEwen spoke to me then and said, "What are your plans for next year? Because we'd like to have you at Hull, obviously." And it was in talks for Bobby to take over already. I think they had that planned or something along those lines. So yeah, that's probably my second kind of. It's weird, but it's a fond memory. Just obviously you get that excitement and everything. I can remember meeting Klutz at a coffee shop the day after a playoff game, just after we qualified for playoff finals with Sheffield. Drove to Hull to see him, and we're sorting out all the stuff there. So it was just kind of weird how it all happened. But no, I mean Hull was awesome. It gave me a lot of ice time, a lot of wake up calls, put it that way, especially at the start of the second year. I think the first year you kind of get that leeway of always new, is young, is not quite experienced, is going to grow into it. And I did. I mean, I can remember I started off pretty well. Obviously, you guys being Panthers fans, I think my first shot were actually a David Clark breakaway. But actually, if you want some Panthers stuff in there, I mean, the first game I actually got on the ice for the Elite was against Nottingham in Nottingham for Hull. I think I got the last 5 minutes. I think my first shot there was a breakaway against someone. I can't remember who it was. So yeah, and then the first proper game was against the Panthers. So yeah, it started off okay, and then I had a pretty big dip that first year. Obviously, that's when that learning curve hits you, and started coming back up, finished the year strong. Probably went into the second year a bit too lazy and obviously young and naive, and it got started off really bad, and it got to a point where I actually thought I would get fired and released by all. And yeah, talked to Klutz about it. I think it was probably worse in my head than it actually was, but it still wasn't a good situation. It's always worse in your head than it ever is in reality. But yeah, I remember talking to him, and from that point, it just kind of took off from there. That's where it clicked, where you need to start putting more work in. You need to start working harder. You can't just rest on your laurels. And that season we had such a good team for Hull. I think we broke like the franchise record for points or something stupid like that. we had a ton of wins. I mean, but then it was a weird season because I think we came eighth on 50% on like 0.500 points percentage. So we just scraped in. It was between us, Coventry, Cardiff, I think, for that eighth place, and we managed to knock Cardiff out. I think we had to beat Sheffield on the last day of the season. I can remember that, and the atmosphere in Hull was crazy. I mean, they didn't have the biggest fan base, but they were so passionate, so loud, and everyone takes a mess out of the whole arena. But when the atmosphere got going there, I mean, it was crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of fond memories at Hull, a lot of good people, and then yeah, moving on to Cardiff. I mean, what can you say? It's been 6 years again though. In the first year, a lot of learning curves. Where that was the opposite, ways of working hard, but maybe not working smart, and maybe letting things get to me more than what I should. I mean, it's a big jump up. It's a storied franchise. It's 30 odd years old now, and they had a lot of success in the past. Obviously, they come out of the dark times a few years before I signed. But yeah, it maybe put a bit too much pressure on me, and that did probably affect my performance at one point. But once I got over that hurdle again, it's obviously, thank God for that, we've not looked back. And obviously they put the time and the money into me, sending me out to Calgary in the summers, which was a huge thing for me. Dan Brabham there come on as a goalie coach, in contact with him like 24/7 pretty much all the time in Cardiff, and we've become pretty close friends. And then it evolved into having Murdy there as well, who's my best friend. So yeah, I mean, the whole situation in Cardiff just went from good to even better, like day by day, pretty much.
How do you, as a netminder, I spent time as a football goalkeeper. If an outfield player makes a mistake, somebody can pick up the pieces. If you make a mistake, the chances are you've conceded a goal. So how do you keep yourself switched on, particularly in games where, like Cardiff, for example, have dominated possession, you don't face that many shots?
It's an hard one. I think that's what people don't understand. It's actually sometimes easier to have 50 odd shots in a game because you don't get to switch off. But at the same time, I kind of like it. That's why I kind of like the hockey out here, because it's just end to end all the time. In your zone, it's east west. They'll put it on your net. They'll just pass it around. It's shots, redirection. Same when you play all the SHL teams in the CHL, the World Championships. It's a different style. I think it's a bit more fluid, a bit faster. So even when you're not having the shots in these leagues, you kind of switched on because you're constantly moving. But yeah, back in Cardiff, it was a little bit harder. There'd be times when we're dominating teams and they just sink 5 guys in front of their own net and then counter, and you'd end up with a breakaway or 2-on-1. I can remember one game last year we played. I think it was Dundee, and you had eight breakaways and partial breakaways on me within the first 2 periods, and I was like, oh, it gets to you in the end, honestly. But
yeah.
No, I mean, when you're a goalie, your job's to try and give your team a chance to win. You're not going to win a game for a team because you can't. Well, I mean, you can score, but you'd have to have a ridiculous shot. But yeah, I mean, you can't win games for your teams. You can make the big saves that give them a chance, but you can never fully win. You have to kind of understand that. There's a lot of young goalies out there that think that they can win games single-handedly, and that's not the case. And when you really truly sit and look at it, if a team wants to win, they have to have a great goalie, but at the same time, you need a great team in front of you to do that job and put the puck in the other net. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to them dominating or them making mistakes, people don't notice that. I get that. And obviously when we make a mistake, there's a big red light goes on. It's been said a million times before, there's a big red light goes on and thousands of people either cheer or boo you. I mean, it goes either way, depends where you're playing, doesn't it? But no, it just, I have, you learn to deal with it in different ways. I have mental resets and different focus points throughout the game. You learn to switch off in between whistles, which sounds daft because sometimes they're dead short, sometimes they're a bit longer. Here you also have the TV timeouts, which give you a chance to just reset and refocus, get some of the sweat out of my sweatband because you use the sweat so much. But yeah, it's all different techniques and you learn it with experience.
It's kind of being a goalie. I mean, I've never been a goalie myself, but I can very much imagine, based on the fan responses, whether it be from football goalies or hockey goalies, whether it be in the Elite League or the NHL, it's either if they're hot and they're playing really well, fans absolutely adore them and they're the best player to have ever played in the league ever. But when they're having a rough stretch of a couple of weeks, it's kind of like, oh, let's trade him, get rid of him. He's not a good player. Like. I guess this is a question, this might be more specific to you because obviously everybody handles things differently, but how much do you potentially pay attention to kind of the fan responses after games?
When we were younger, that's one of the problems I had when I first went to Cardiff. You're in a bit more, well, a lot bigger spotlight than what I was at Hull, and you see it all and you let it get to you a little bit, but that's just an experience, and then you learn to deal with it. I think the hardest bit for me with the social media and what fans don't realize is when they're really getting in at you, it's not you that it affects, it's your family.
Yeah.
Obviously your parents and that, it's pretty bad. I know my mum was pretty bad for it. She probably still is, but I make sure I don't talk to her about it now. Something else you learn growing up. But no, I mean, that's what they don't see. And it's your family that have to deal with all the crap that's being thrown at you, basically. I had to watch what I said there and make sure I didn't swear. But yeah, it's the crap that's thrown at you, and they obviously see that and they deal with it differently to you. Whereas for me, it's just a case of, well, there's a reason why that person's paying to watch me play and isn't on the ice coaching me or isn't on the ice playing against me. I care about certain people's opinions, but not necessarily some random fan who's giving me abuse for letting a goal in. You know what I mean? Whereas obviously the hardest bit is obviously just seeing your family have to go through that. But again, it's something that they learn and they have to get used to. And unfortunately, these days it's part and parcel of the job. And I think it's such a tricky situation, especially in the elite league, because stuff like Twitter is so big over there and social media is huge for the clubs. They want you on there, but they also don't want you to be affected by it. So it's kind of a catch-22. You're going to see it all, but then you have to kind of just learn to ignore it. Whereas here, the social media side of things aren't quite as big. I think they're bigger on maybe Facebook and Instagram than Twitter. So you don't necessarily see it a lot. I mean, I rarely use Facebook now, apart from to promote stuff. And yeah, and Instagram it's a nicer place than Twitter, really. So it's always easy for people to say stuff when they're behind a phone or behind a keyboard, whereas to your face, they're probably not going to say that. So once you learn that and you get that through your head, it's a lot easier to take.
Yeah, I know that there's some players that like really thrive off it. And when the opposition fans are all chanting, it's like, it's all your fault. And there's some netminders that really thrive off that. But when I was at Cardiff for 3 years at university, I'd come whenever the Panthers were away in the big blue tent and then later the arena. And it was always like coming up against a brick wall. You knew that you could only afford to let kind of like 2 or 3 goals in because did you enjoy being like the pain in the backside of all the other teams in the Elite League?
Probably my favourite bit, actually. Obviously, I'm a Brit, so I'm not supposed to be very good. And that's for another debate, though. But it's one of my favourite things. Obviously, going to away games, and I mean, I always say to people, especially the young goals, that ask me about, well, how does it feel when you get booed or when people are giving you abuse? And it's actually one of my favourite things because I always said to them, like, if they're giving you abuse, you're doing something right. Do you know what I mean? So if they don't like you, you're probably doing something right. Obviously, there's times when you're just being an idiot, and that's why they don't like you. But I don't think that's happened, touch wood, too many times in my career so far. I can remember one occasion but that turned out pretty fun actually in the end because we were up in Glasgow. Pretty memorable game for me that actually. But yeah, I think when when the away fans are giving it you, or if you're playing away and the home fans are giving it you, then yeah, I usually actually quite enjoy it. There's some comments that you think, oh, that's a bit close to the bone there, but I hope there's not too many kids around and when they've said that. But then there's some you just laugh at them mainly, and usually it's usually someone giving you a few gestures. So usually take my mask off and just give them a little smile or whatever while I'm having a drink. So it's always fun to see their reaction once they see that you're just laughing at them.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're not supposed to be their favourite player because you're the one stopping all the shots that their team are trying to score. So why not? But speaking of away games and kind of the experience of playing in other rinks, especially during your time in the Champions Hockey League, because obviously you've been with Cardiff playing in the Champions Hockey League for several years now. You've obviously had the chance to go to some of the best rinks in Europe, whether it be Sweden, Austria, with going to Graz, like you mentioned. What are kind of how obviously there's a huge step up with some of these teams compared to the Elite League, and you mentioned earlier how you have to kind of have your head on a swivel the entire night. You're going to be in for a bit of a rough ride because you're playing against some of the best players on this side of the world. But kind of what are some of the memorable moments for you within the Champions Hockey League? Because we have a lot of fans across Europe that. We have Swiss fans and Swedish fans. We have people that pay attention to the Champions Hockey League, and it's kind of a big tournament they like to follow. And we're kind of obviously seen as like that underdog country in the Champions Hockey League. That we had Nottingham go to the knockout stages once, but we've never necessarily been one of those nations that we're always competing for the championship. Obviously, Frölunda wins it practically every single year, so if you're going up against them, it's going to be a bit of a rough ride. So what's kind of
the other year?
Yeah, so what's kind of your experience with the Champions Hockey League? Did you find that the more you played in it, the more comfortable you got? Did you find that it helped you get your position and kind of feel more comfortable now that you've shifted over to Austria because you've played a little bit against some of those teams?
I think it was definitely huge for me. Once to just get to play on an international level that's not just the World Championships. But I think one of the most exciting things for the CHL and the Elite League is just seeing how much the teams have come on in the Elite. I remember watching the first year that Panthers were ever in it, and some of the results didn't quite go the way that obviously they wanted, but you kind of just wanted them to do well, even though they're your enemies during the season. You want them to do well, you want them to represent Britain, and I think the next 2 years after that was Sheffield. You're always looking to, we can do better than that, we can do better than that. But no, I mean, but then you actually get to the CHL and you realise the level that it's at. I can remember the first game we ever played was in Davos. So obviously playing in that arena, they didn't have a full stadium as they want when they're playing an Elite League team there, but they still had all the fans sat behind me making some noise. Our fans were going crazy on the other end, and I think we ended up losing about 10-1 that game. I think we flew in late, and I think the whole kind of organisation maybe underestimated it a little bit. I mean, we got there pretty late on the night before. It's at altitude, obviously Cardiff's right at sea level, and you could see. I mean, right in the pregame skate in the morning. Actually, I can remember doing some movement at the end of practice, and God, why do I feel so tired? And then it went until after when it suddenly clicked. Oh, we're at altitude. There's no wonder that we felt like that. And we played in Liberec a few days later, and we were way better. But and then we ended up beating Davos in Cardiff. But I think like the results, like the year that Nottingham went through, you switch back to that first year Nottingham was in. There's no way in hell basically that Nottingham are going to get through with that level of players and that caliber. And then what was it, 4 years later, something like that, 3 or 4 years later, all of a sudden they've topped the group and they've gone through. And then last year, I mean, we were in a group with Frölunda, Mountfield, Graz, and us. And we were top of the group until we played Frölunda twice. I mean, if Frölunda had won the first 2 games like they should have, we would have been out of that group straight away. But obviously, things just didn't go our way. And I can remember winning the game in Graz and finishing the first 4 games at the top of the table, and people think, oh, we got a chance here. And you're kind of looking, thinking, oh, yeah, but Frölunda need 2 wins to kind of get through as well. So, yeah, those games went okay for the first 2 periods, and then I think they just took over then. I think they were fitter, they were more skilled, they were faster, obviously, and yeah, the third period just weren't good for us.
Yeah, I think when we came up against Frölunda and it was with 9-2 losses in the end, and when they turn it up to that level, when they need the result, it's just so difficult to stop them from scoring. But one of the questions that we had, and a fan question as well, who's the best player that you think you've faced? Were there any players that they'd be coming at you maybe on a breakaway, half breakaway, and you thought this is going to be a difficult puck to stop?
I don't know, because all the players are so different. It's kind of like goaltender. We know one goaltender is the same. They all bring different things, and it's hard. I mean, there's different kind of shot techniques. People have different releases. They can disguise stuff better, but then someone else might not disguise it as well, but their shot's more accurate or harder. And it's a weird one. But I mean, one of them that sticks out is obviously Patrick Kane at the World Championships, because you never knew whether he was going to pass or shoot. So it was just a case of holding my ground as much as I could be, getting ready to load one leg and just fly across. Going setting up Jack Eichel for quite a few one-timers on that power play. But yeah, there's people like that, and obviously then you play against Canada and you got like Mark Stone and people, and again they're a totally different game, but they're just as effective sometimes. So it's kind of hard. I mean, one thing that does stick in my mind is when we played Slovakia for the first time. So in the pre-tournament game in Poprad, I can remember Kiefer going through some penalty shots. So they must have known that we're having penalty shots at the end of it. And he showed me Thomas Tatar's move, and the guy actually pulled this exact same move and I managed to get a piece of it. So that's one thing that did stick out for me, that even though I knew it was coming, it was still, I could keep up with it, got a piece of it and poked it away from him. And then he tried shooting the second one, actually, which luckily I saved. But I'm thinking those refs might have given it him. But no, that kind of sticks in, that you know it's coming. But it's still so good that it was hiding it till the last minute, and in my head I'm thinking, oh, is it actually going to come? Is he going to do something totally different here and just put it between my legs or something? So yeah, I can't really pick out one player that's better than all the others, but there's been a hell of a lot of good players that we've come up against.
I certainly want to go into talking about your experience with Team Great Britain, especially over the last couple of years. But before we kind of delve into that a little bit deeper, how does it feel? Does it register with you in a way that it kind of does for fans when, you know, obviously you, the 2019 tournament, you went and played against some of, if not the best hockey players on the entire planet, NHL superstars, not just international superstars. When you recount this story, like, you're just saying the name Jack Eichel and Patrick Kane and Thomas Tatar and Mark Stone so casually, as if like that's just, you know, like, oh, you know, that's just part of the business, you know. But like, did you kind of have that moment where you were thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm playing against some of the best players on the planet right now?
Not right at the time. I think I'm more into the goalies than the players because I'm just a bit of a goalie geek. But I can remember in the Canada game, at the end of the game, obviously you're all peed off because you've just lost. I think we ended up losing like 8 or 9-0 or whatever it were. And I can remember looking across and seeing Murray's name on there and realizing, obviously, no, that guy's won 2 Stanley Cups. They were played, and then you're like, well, I've just played against Carter Hart, who is a lot younger than me, and you think that in theory older people should be like, oh, he's younger, just who cares? Like, don't need to think about him. But then you're like, well, it's such a good goalie. He's turning that franchise around. Yeah, and that's when it probably clicked for the first time ever. But then again, it wasn't until after the Worlds, when you kind of went home and we realized exactly what we'd done and what we'd achieved, that then it did start sinking in, the players that you've been playing against. But when, to be fair, it's just a case, it sounds a bit nonchalant, but it's and not as exciting as what people probably want to hear. But then it's your job, and you're put on the ice to play against whoever's against you, whether that's someone from the ENL or someone from the NHL or NIHL to the NHL. That probably sounds a bit better, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like, whether you're playing Swindon or Steel Dogs, or you're playing Team USA or like Team Canada, it don't matter. You're put on there to do your best. You're put on there to try and win, and that's what you do. It don't matter who you're against. Obviously, you're aware of these players. You're aware of their tendencies and where they shoot, or the plays that they usually set up. But that's about as far as it goes, really. It's they're just another player that I want to stop at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you've certainly done plenty of that. You've made some fantastic saves, which just sent everyone going crazy in your times. Where do you think the Great Britain in the top tier again for another year? You've achieved a lot in your career. Where do you kind of want GB to go? Are you still kind of pushing and dreaming that maybe you'll get into an Olympic Games?
That'd be awesome, to be fair. For GB right now, though, it's just a case of staying up. We've got one hell of a challenge on our hands if the Worlds go ahead. I'm pretty confident that they will, especially with the under-20s men's going ahead. So I'd like to see that, but I mean, we've got a tough chance. I mean, some of the guys might not have played a lot of hockey this year, and we've got to go in and we've got to stay up at the top tier of the Worlds again. And Belarus are a totally different beast to France. They're a completely different style of hockey, more of a Russian style, and something that GB maybe have struggled with when we've come up against the likes of Kazakhstan and teams like that in the past. So that's going to be the biggest challenge, and that's going to be our main goal right now, and I think that should be our main goal right now anyway. Obviously, I've not spoke to the team or Peter or anyone for quite a while, but yeah, it's I think our aim should be to stay up for another year and aim to be at that top level of the world hockey for quite a long time. I mean, obviously, it would have been nice to have gone through to the next round of the Olympic qualifiers and pushed on from there, but we still would have had one hell of a task just to get there, because I think we had like Latvia and someone else in our group, and it could have been done, but unfortunately, it just didn't happen for us that week in Nottingham. So yeah, I mean, we'll move on. It would be amazing to play in the Olympics, but my focus would be to stay in that top tier of the World Championships for as long as we can and prove that it wasn't just a one-off.
So, Ben, obviously we've started talking about the World Championships and Great Britain's run during the 2019 tournament a couple of years ago. Obviously, you've been a part of the Team GB program for the last few years now, and when you first got to the national program, when you first started suiting up in games for the team, the GB national team were a long way away from being in the top flight of international hockey. So, kind of take us through how it, like, that journey that both you and the team took over those years. Obviously, the coaching staff that came in and the players that have been a part of the roster for the last sort of 4 or 5 years, they've kind of been a group that stayed together and gone through the hardships of losing those last day games to win either the gold or silver medal. And you've obviously been together through the triumphs that you guys have had over the last couple of years. So what has that experience been like, being with pretty much the same group of guys year in, year out, and going from the struggles that you had to being in the top flight of the competition?
Well, I think, to be fair, my first year in it's kind of weird because my first year in this actual squad, I went as the emergency goalie, was Paul Thompson and Rob Wilson's last year as the coaches, and the team was only about 7 minutes away from actually getting promotion to the top tier. I think Kazakhstan had to draw or beat Ukraine in the last game, and Ukraine were up until 7 minutes left. And I can remember us all being sat there, and I can remember going back into the room after, and a couple of guys like in tears and stuff about it, and thinking, well, we're going to get to do this every year, so why, like, don't be so upset. Obviously, a bit young, you don't really understand it. And then obviously Tomo and Rob Wilson left. The new obviously regime come in, and it just didn't work out, unfortunately. And I think we took quite a few steps back as a program. It took us a while to find our feet again. I think the signs were there. It was my first tournament where I kind of took over. I think Murph was ill. Didn't have the best first games, and I went to relieving. Then played the rest of the games. And it was the last game in that tournament. Poland had already got, it was in Lithuania actually, Vilnius. Poland had already got promotion. We played them, and the system seemed to kick in, and we just dominated them. I think we beat them 3-2 or 2-1 or something like that. And I think that's where it kind of started clicking again. Like, hang on a minute, like we're back on track. We're going to get back on track. And then Pete came in as the head coach. We lost in the last game to Lithuania. We lost the year after we lost in the last game to Ukraine, and obviously they're a bit of a heartbreaker. But again, it's learning curve, and I think that if we'd have gone up, the positive spin on that looking back now is if we'd have gone up either of those 2 years, then I don't think we'd have stayed up. We weren't anywhere near the level that we needed to be, and I think we were too good for Division 1B. We'd outgrown that. We shouldn't have been in there anymore, but we weren't really at a level to get through Division 1A. We would have been on the cusp of coming straight back down again and back in that spot. And then I think you would have seen a turnover of players, and maybe players get pushed out that shouldn't have been pushed out, but maybe they start rebuilding a younger team or something. And luckily for us, we had the year in Belfast. We ground that out, and I think we just dominated that. Then obviously we go to Hungary, and obviously everyone knows what happens there, and obviously the fairy tale or whatever you want to call it there with Farms and his horrible shot from that half wall. But yeah, I mean that tournament were amazing. That's one of my best ever memories. And then to go to Slovakia last year, that was just the year before now. That was just absolutely amazing. And the experience, the atmosphere, the magnitude of what we achieved as a team for the nation, it's just crazy. And that's, I think, when we're talking about players who I've played against and obviously seen those big names, I think that's when you realise as a kid growing up, you're always you have those dreams of like playing in the World Championship, playing in the NHL, and playing in the World Championships and stuff like that. But as you get older, you suddenly realise, one, you're British and you're not going to play at NHL. Two, you're not going to play at NHL. And then three, you just think, well, maybe GB's never going to be there. We're supposed to be a Division 1B team if you listen to people, or we should even be lower if you listen to certain fans in Elite League and around the world. But then all of a sudden we're playing in Division 1A, we're playing against Canada, we're playing against USA, we're playing against Finland, and you're playing against these draft prospects, these NHLs that are earning millions, and you end up staying up and doing something that's not been done. I think it was in 51 years or something like that. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know how true it is. I'm pretty certain that we were the only ever team to get Division 1B gold, Division 1A gold, and then to top that off, we then stay in Pool A, and you just think, well, that's history right there. And when is that really going to be beaten again or broken again by any team, or especially GB? So, yeah, for the going back to like my first year to see how close they got and seeing the guys in that state to then stick with probably 90% of those guys or 80% of those guys, whatever it is, to do what we did. It's pretty special, to be fair.
I was going to ask you about that fairy tale game because it had been a long, hard tournament, and like the goal went in, and you could hear even on the commentary, Aaron Murphy was almost welling up. What was it like actually being a part of it?
Is that the France game or the Hungary game?
The Hungary game right at the end.
Yeah, no, I mean the weirdest thing was that I was on the bench, and you celebrate like you go crazy and think, God, we've done it, and then all of a sudden in my head I'm thinking, oh, crap. Obviously it weren't that polite, but you think, oh crap, we've got 15.8 seconds left of what it is, and whatever it were, they pulled the goal shot, and you think, oh my God, like you got to calm yourself back down here. And they had the shot where the guy kind of muffined it a little bit, and it flew over the top. Their crowd thought he'd gone in. Obviously, it landed on the back of the net, and it was still a pretty close call. So yeah, and then even off the final face-off, I mean, just before that, Lacko beats out the icing, and they still give the icing. It was crazy. I mean, I didn't actually realize at the time. You were just too into it and too focused. But watching it back, thinking like, what were those refs doing? I mean, were they trying to scam us out of a gold medal or what? Get Hungary up? But no, you look at that, and then even off that face-off, they get a little shot through it. Then the guys come on and celebrate. They're chucking the helmets, and we've still got overtime to play. So guys didn't know whether to jump on and celebrate. So half the guys stayed, half the guys were off over the boards. Some of the guys were on the ice with their helmets off, and everyone just going crazy. So it's probably the weirdest but most fun OT and penalty shots I've ever played. There were no pressure, so I think I chucked about 3 pad stacks out in that OT period, which Dan back in Cardiff probably wouldn't have liked, but it's fun at the end of the day, and I would have never have done anything like that in an OT game. All of saying that, I threw a pad stack out in the French OT, but that was for different reasons. So whereas if any other choice was in the Hungary one, you're going around having fun, then it goes to a shootout and there's no pressure on, so you want to win. The only thing that I had in my head for the Hungary game in the OT and the shootout was that we've come that far, we've won this gold medal. I want to finish with our national anthem being played, and that was probably my biggest motivation to make sure that nothing went in the OT period.
And then kind of moving on to the France game, because you've obviously alluded to it. What was the feeling of you being in that net and then finding out that Great Britain are staying up in the tournament for the next year? It's not just a one and done. You're back there again.
Well, I was dead excited because we were going to go to Switzerland. So I think, I love Switzerland. When we've been to Davos and Bern, it's been amazing. And then obviously that didn't happen because of this stupid virus. But no, I mean, everyone's seen the video when it goes in from the stands. And you see obviously Davey fall off the bench. You can see how excited he is, but that's Davey for you. I'm skating up the ice like I've never skated before in my life, and look like I've never been on the ice before the way that I'm skating. But that's just how excited we all were. I mean, Irakis, you were ready for it to be over, and you just wanted it to be over. So when it went in, it went off. You couldn't believe it, but at the same time, it was just like ecstasy, really. And yeah, the atmosphere there. We were playing in Slovakia, but it felt like we were playing for the home team. It's one of the best atmospheres I've ever played in. Absolutely crazy. And that, yeah, when that goal went in, when Benny scores that goal, I mean, you just think of the whole OT period were absolutely nuts. I mean, the first big chance where Stevie kind of blocks the guy, falls on me, and my pad gets ripped off my leg. So I couldn't move, and the guy's just jamming it. We get around that, and I'm thinking, all right, maybe we'll go down and attack now. That's usually how it happens in hockey. You get away with a big chance, or you miss a big chance, and all of a sudden they get one or score something. All right, that's it. We've weathered that one. We'll go down. We'll weather this now. We'll get a chance, and then right off the face-off, they get another big chance, and there's a big melee in front of the net. I'm stacking the pads. Oak is flailing around in front of me as well, and yeah, we end up getting that face and thinking, Jesus, come on, that's 2 now. We need at least. We need to get out of our zone. Just give me a breather. And the next minute, obviously, Ben wins that face-off. Never seen a face-off one like that before in my life. Jono goes down. I mean, he's old, but he's fast. Jono his legs were going crazy. Everyone knows what he's like from playing against him in the Elite League. And yeah, I mean, to go from those 2 chances against us to then winning a face-off as clean as that, and Johnny doing what he did there, and the second French guy committing to Johnny and leaving Ben open. And yeah, when Johnny made that pass, I'm thinking, come on, Ben, just don't drop past it like that first period. But so when that went in, it was just crazy. And I mean, you can even see on the, like I said about the camera angle from the stands where you see Davey fall and me skate like an idiot. But even when it shows you the main camera feed, and Ben, Richie, and John don't know who to celebrate with, I think they're kind of in a bit of disbelief as well. So it's all just sums up British hockey there for you. It's no one had a clue what we're actually going on and what we should do.
We had Chris Ellis on a few weeks ago, and he couldn't speak highly enough of the work that Pete Russell and his coaching staff had done. And you alluded to it earlier, not just specifically with GB, but obviously with Cardiff as well, with Todd Kelman and everyone around that, and indeed any team. How much of a difference can the coaching staff make, and how important is it to have the right coach for the team?
I think it always starts from the top. So even above the coaching staff, I mean, in Cardiff, if you want to harp on about them, it starts with the owners. I mean, the owners are like no owners I've ever met before. They're absolutely unbelievable. I mean, when I went about going to Calgary, I mean, they took me into their homes. Steve and Brian both had me live there. I went around to Craigs a few times. And it's just amazing. It starts with people just being passionate, and then it drops down to Todd, who's just runs everything like it should be run, treats you like adults, not like a piece of meat, treats you like proper humans. And yeah, you get everything what you need, but you don't go overboard. And I think that's the thing. If you know, basically, it makes it in a way that all you've got to worry about is your performance. You're not worrying about your paycheck. You're not worrying about if your kit's going to arrive, if your sticks are going to be ready for when your batch is broken or anything like that. Or there's just nothing to worry about in Cardiff. And it's the same with GB. You start with Buxy at the top. Everything's organised for you. And then you look at the coaching staff. Pete understands it being a Brit. He gets it because he is British. He's passionate. He's then also got the smarts he's got the hockey IQ. And then you bring in Corey, who's just like no other coach that I've really come across before. I can't speak highly enough for Corey. Once you kind of get to know him and get to know his humour and his sarcasm and the way he is and how socially awkward he is, you learn to love him a little bit. And then obviously Kiefer's in there. He brings that intensity as well. And Kiefer surprised me a lot. To say I'd been coaching that long, it really surprised me in a good way. So yeah, it starts. I mean, even you start looking at the other teams that starting to copy. I mean, Nottingham brought Deuce in, and yeah, they had a rough start, but so did the Devils when Todd and Lordo took over. We had a rough start. I mean, I can remember Lordo losing his mind in one practice because some drills weren't being done very well, and we were down in 8th place, and the fans were loving us because we were putting on a show. I mean, back then it was more fighting and stuff, so the fans were loving us. But we were still in 8th place. And I can remember staff and being like, what are you thinking? Have you not realised you're in 8th place here? And that's when we started turning it around again. I think everyone clicked on and thought, oh, he's got a point here. And I mean, yeah, you look at Nottingham, they bring Deuce in. He starts running it. Obviously, he's had the experience of Cardiff as well, which is priceless for him, and priceless for the guys in Nottingham as well. And obviously, they bring Wallace in. So he changes that around as well. So I think if teams start going down that route and start swinging on, then the Elite League's only going to get better and better. And it's the same with GB. Everything just has to be just treat your players like humans. Just treat them like professionals. Give them what they need to do the job. Don't be cheap on it, and they'll go out and do a job for you. That's how it should be. Like the players shouldn't have to worry about money. They shouldn't have to worry about kit. They shouldn't have to worry about getting food or anything like that. It's like our job is to go on the ice and perform and win games and put on a show for the fans. And if we're having to worry about apartments, about sticks, about money, like I just said, that's more things that are going to weigh on people. That's more stresses, and it runs you down. Your energy levels get lower, and then you don't perform as well as if you've got nothing else to worry about.
I think that's a good point because I would imagine not just you personally, but you've obviously seen through some of your experiences that you've had, whether it be with Hull or whether it be with Cardiff or some of the other teams you've played for, the effect that the outside pressures of, real life, if you want to put it that way, kind of worrying about housing and food and looking after your family and making sure everything's, all your ducks are in a row, essentially. obviously fans might see that and think, oh, but like he's still a professional hockey player, like he's getting paid to do this, like come on, like get over it, like go on, do your job, everybody else has to do it with all these problems. But at the same time, like I don't think a lot of fans, I think you'd be able to say this far better than I could, they don't understand how much those pressures have an impact on not just a player's kind of mental state or where they're at, but also if they're worried about those things, it's obviously going to have a direct impact on how they're playing, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even if it goes back to families coming over, like if the apartments have got mold all over, the kids are ill, the wife's not happy, then the player's not going to be happy. And you know what? Like hockey should be fun, whether it's a professional job or not. It should be fun because it's a sport at the end of the day. And if you want to be good if you want to play your best at a sport, you have to be happy. You have to have fun. You need to be relaxed. You can't react, especially as a goalie. I can't react if I'm tense. You know what I mean? If I'm proper, you can be dialed in, but you have to be relaxed. Your breathing has to be under control. And when you're not 100% focused, you get more tense. You don't react as quick. You don't read the play as good. And all these factors can come into it. And then at the same time, I mean, you hear some of the stories about. Look, I'm fortunate enough to never be in a situation like some of the stories that I've heard. But some of them, I don't know how they actually stuck it out. To be fair, it's kind of crazy, and that's not just in the elite league. That's all over the world with the hockey scene, especially in the lower level leagues. But I do think that maybe the state of it's getting to a lot better standard worldwide, not just Britain, not just Britain. Basically, it's a worldwide thing, and I think the whole thing's getting better. But I think people are waking up. I mean, when people say, "Well, the professionals are getting paid to do it," I mean, when I was at home off this year, I was getting paid like £250 a week or something, and obviously living in my own house with like paying bills and stuff. So it's not a lot to live on. Luckily, my parents were awesome. They're only 40 minutes away, and if I ever needed anything, they'd help me out. So I mean, you get paid enough, but you don't get paid like people think you do until you get to like the top leagues. It's not football, unfortunately, which would be nice, unless you get to like the SHL or the MHL or something like that. Then you don't have much to worry about. But yeah, it's not like people think it is. It's still a grind, and the stresses get to you. You're just normal people. I think the biggest thing that I can kind of put it to is that people see you as. They don't see you as people, because when they come to watch you, you're behind the glass. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a zoo. You're not a zoo animal. Like, I don't think they see you as a zoo animal. Some people might. But do you know what I mean? Like, you see something, it's almost like they're not real humans. Like, nothing affects them like normal people. But at the end of the day, it's just normal people. It's you just walking down the street just like anyone else. You have stresses like anyone else. You have to overcome adversity like anyone else. It's just one of the biggest things I always coach to my to the goalies when I teach them is it's adversity in life is just like adversity in hockey. Everyone's the same, and some of the battles that you have in hockey set you up for real world life, and some of the real world adversity that you face helps you out in hockey. So it's we're not immune to it. We're just normal people just having a job that we love. I mean, there's people that are doing other jobs that they absolutely love. So it's just the same as them. Basically, it just means that we don't sit in an office. We get to play a sport, and we get to do that for a living instead.
I think it's interesting what you said, like, again, with the people aspect, because I know when I started watching, they almost kind of feel like celebrities, and you'd never know anything about them. It was only when I started covering the Panthers for the BBC that you chat to the players afterwards and you go, oh yeah, well, he's just got a Nottingham accent and he talks like anybody else. But I know it's key what you're saying there with, it's particularly with hockey. It's not football. You're not on £300,000 a week, and you can be away like every weekend, and it's still a full-time job because you're training. If you're not skating, you're in the gym. It is a normal, a job just like everybody else, and you are still paying bills and mortgages exactly the same as everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like your 9-to-5 job, sitting behind an office or grinding away at a workstation or building sites or whatever, unless you're Matthew Myers, obviously, but with his building. But no, I mean, you're still, like I said, we get Mondays off and that's it. Obviously, if you had a tough schedule, they will give you the optional on a Tuesday, but you still have to work out or something and do stuff to recover. But you don't just go to the rink, train and leave, like you say. You got your workouts, you got to you got to recover, you got to do your maintenance, your stretching, everything like that. And yeah, that's easy. That's part of the job, but it still takes hours from you. If you know what I mean, you probably be at the rink for like 8ish and back by 2. So like I said, it's not a 9 till 5. Obviously, you can have longer days, you can have shorter days. As you get close to the game days, they tend to get shorter. The start of the week, and especially training camp, are long. Some training camps you're doing 2-a-days, so you actually you're probably on for about an hour, and then you're back out again, and then you're back home and straight to bed, ready to go again the next day. So yeah, it's all different. And like I said, don't get me wrong, it's not a 9 till 5 day. It's not your office grind. It's not your building site grind, but it's still a grind, and it's still, you got to work hard to get to the level that we play at. Everyone's professional. It's not like the old days where they used to go and get drunk and not work out, and they drink the night before and then go and play, and everyone would love them. And now it's you're putting in work all summer. I mean, we have maybe 2 weeks off, and then you're straight back in the gym. Maybe 6 weeks off the ice, you're back on the ice. So it's pretty much a year-round thing now. Not like it used to be in everyone's professional athletes, which is that's how it should be, in my opinion. You're paid to do a job. You should be ready to do that job. You should be in the best shape that you can be, and be in the best position to perform that job at your best abilities. Really, as cheesy as that sounds. And just going back to like when I said people seeing you as kind of like just animals behind the glass. I didn't mean that in an horrible way for those people that might get offended. That's just kind of, I know, like as a kid, when you're saying that you think that the celebrities, I mean, I can remember going to Steelers as a kid and be like, oh my God, that's Ron Shooter on ice. And then I get to play with him in the EIHL. I think, that's Ron Shooter. Like,
yeah.
It's just a weirdo. I absolutely love them. So, no, Ron were awesome. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. You're thinking that's Wayne Carley. Piero Greco over there, or Trevor Robbins. Used to love and hate Trevor Robbins at the same time, but if I saw him in the street, I'd probably be like, oh my God, like that's Trevor Robbins or whatever. And that is what people see. But at the end of the day, they're just normal people. So yes, I'm sorry if I offended anyone when I said that, but yeah, just
no, I know exactly what you meant.
I'm sure they'll be all right. I'm sure it's not a problem. But you alluded to it slightly earlier, kind of talking about the changes that have been made, especially with a lot of the elite league teams in recent years, to kind of make sure the players can focus on the game and not have to worry about other things, and kind of the infrastructural changes, whether it be from the league perspective or from individual teams. Where do you see UK hockey going in the next couple of years? Do you see things continuing to trend upwards? Do you think we've kind of hit a point where we're going to need some major changes or something big to happen in order for it to keep trending upwards? Like, because obviously you're now seeing it in Austria for kind of, you're a little bit distanced from it now. So do you have a different perspective on it now than, say, a year or two ago when you were obviously playing for Cardiff?
I think it's a tough one because it's totally different situations. Obviously here they have TV deals, they have the big league sponsor and stuff like that. Right now we're playing on 0 fans. So, and that's something that the elite league can't do. So I think if it really wants to take a step forward, it has to get a big TV deal. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a year, but they could build up to it. And I think I'm sure that they are working actively. I think everyone sits there and thinks, oh, they're not doing anything, but really they are. Like behind the scenes, I'm sure that they are. I'm sure there's a lot of planning on, and now more than ever is time to really go out and get a TV deal, because you're thinking, well, you could have all these people watching it that had used to be sat at a game, and your TV channel is going to get those ratings if you were paying for it. I mean, I saw a stat pop up on my Google feed today from our game against Linz on Sunday, and the free network here, I think, had something like 70,000 views, people tune in for that game, which is a lot. Not saying they stuck around for the whole game, it might have only been a minute or so, but it's still at 75,000 people or whatever it were that tuned in. And I'm sure that you could hit some serious numbers in the UK as well, because there's a lot of attention now that hockey's not playing. So, I think it's going to have to be something where the teams don't have to depend on the fans as much. But again, like I said, that's a lot easier said than done. It's a lot more political stuff and a lot more business stuff than what I know about. So I can't really comment on that thing. But yeah, and then I think club-wise and players-wise, I think it sounds cheesy and people are going to be like, well, it's because you've played for Cardiff, like it's bumming Cardiff, you know what I mean? But I think people have to start, clubs have to start kind of looking at Cardiff and be like, well, they've done it right. They've not always had the best team. The only year that we had the best team on paper, we dominated and we won the league by February or whatever it was, in my opinion anyway. So, yeah, so they're obviously doing something right for us to be able to play at that level and that consistency each year. So I think teams now have to start looking at, one, obviously they need to stick within the means. The last thing you want to see is any clubs going bust. But you have to really start looking at how you're treating your players and how you're doing, and then develop the name. Develop your brand, develop your name, and get that reputation built up. And I think that's the key thing now going forward. Even if teams maybe have to get some younger players in to start with and pay, like keep the wage bill down, but treat them better. And then eventually you get that reputation. The bigger sponsors come in because they want to be associated with you, just like they did in Cardiff. I mean, my first year, I don't think we had a title sponsor in Cardiff, and I think they took a pretty big hit from it, but the treat is all right. They flew us up to Scotland for games and stuff like that, put us in a hotel the night before, and that night flew us back the next day, and they give us, like I said, the best chance to win, put us in a good position. And I think that's what teams are going to have to start looking, rather than busting it 9-10 hours on the day of a game and then getting there an hour and a half, 2 hours before a game and expecting your team to win, rather than just show up. Like, going to win. I mean, all the teams over here, they always travel the night before if they've got. I mean, the travel here is nothing compared to what it is back in Cardiff and some of the Scotland teams, obviously, for them. But we bus everywhere apart from two places, and they're like 5 and 6 hours away. So they go up the night before, they eat on the way, they eat that night. They travel back after the game. Obviously, you get fed before and after games, and I think that's how it should be done now. To be fair, it has to be professional. And I think that's the way that clubs have to start looking at it and really develop the professional side of it, and then they can start maybe raking in a bit more money. I went on a bit of a rant there.
It's all right, no worries.
No, there you go. Elite League teams, you've been told. Just a final fan question, and this one from Slapshot Vintage. Do you have a favourite ever jersey? Or any
I saw this one actually earlier. So
I know obviously the Elite League does a lot of kind of. Oh, there we go.
No, my favourite one is my jersey from the World Championships last year. The Nike jerseys, they're really strange. They look really like they're small and they're tight. You put them on, you pick them up, and you think, this is not going to fit very well. And then you put it on, like, this is the best jersey I've ever worn. And the designs are pretty sick, but to wear as well, they're unbelievable. Same with the socks. Just there's something about that jersey. And you only ever see Nike jerseys come out at the top level of the World Championship, so they have that like aura about them. And I think, I've got I think it was the white one back at home, and that's something that's never gonna leave me. Well, my parents have it at the minute, but as soon as I can, I'll be taking it. And if I'm ever rich enough to have a little man cave, that'll be up on the wall.
So, the last kind of question I wanted to ask you, based on kind of sitting there talking to Chris before we started recording the episode. Obviously, you've been a member of many different locker rooms, whether it be the player personnel in the locker rooms, or whether it be, joining Graz 99ers, moving to Team GB, going from Hull to Cardiff, et cetera, et cetera. What's the kind of personality you have in the locker room? Or what, if we were to ask any of your teammates, what's Ben Bowns like in the locker room? What do you think is the response that we'd get?
Can't really repeat what they probably would say, but yeah. I like to keep it loose. There's a lot of goalies that are dead serious all the time, and I'm not like that. I don't see the point. Played a year and a bit with Passy Wright and saw how he was. So kind of thought, well, if he can be like that and play at the levels that he did, then obviously he's doing something right for as long as he did. So yeah, I'm a bit looser on a game day. Obviously, like, you dial it in, but I'm not like one of these goalies that'll go and sit in a toilet for 45 minutes and pitch black and visualize stuff for 45 minutes or not talk to anyone. I like to sit and chill and talk to the guys around me, and then dial it in just like obviously going out for warm, come back in, and then I really dial it in. And that way it doesn't take as much of a mental toll on you either. I mean, when you're just going 24/7, when your brain's like super serious and you're living, breathing goaltending, and you're analysing footage, analysing games, which I was like that at one point. But no, I like to keep it loose. I do like to joke about quite a bit and tell a few lies and get the import screen, although I'm an import now, which is kind of weird. It's strange saying that. I'm not used to it. I feel like more of an Austrian than an import. I feel like I got more in common with them. But no, I haven't really had a chance to really come out my shell here because I've not been around. I've been around the guys every day, but you don't want to get in the way because you at the start of it I was hobbling around on crutches with my knee in a brace and whatever, so you just clumsy and then you're a bit depressed because you've just been injured. But no, I think if you talk to the guys back in Cardiff or Hull or GB, I think that they'd probably they'd have a few choice words, but I think they'd probably allude to me playing a few more pranks than what they're like.
Yeah, final question then from me, Ben. I've got just a note written down here. I'll expand on it a bit. What do you do to kind of unwind yourself from hockey? I mean, I've got down here that with kind of the expansion to the NHL series with Cardiff and stuff, you're kind of in that game now. So are you playing as yourself on the NHL video games, or do you find yourself on the golf course, or?
No, I haven't played golf since my second year in Cardiff because none of the Brits down there played it. So I used to play it pretty much weekly with friends in Sheffield. I was never a good golf. I can't stand it when it's serious. I like to have a bit of a laugh. I'm not good enough to be serious. But no, some of the guys here, a lot of them actually do enjoy golf. But for me, it's a case that I'm not a big gamer. I do have all the games that I'm part of because that were a dream of me as a kid a dream of mine as a kid to be on NHL. So obviously the first one come out and I bought it. I think I maybe had a year where I didn't, but the last 2 years, obviously this year I bought it because I'm not with Cardiff and with the European team that's actually on the game because I believe that our league's in there, not just the CHL. But no, I think that the few games that I've been a part of, I think I've bought pretty much every single one apart from one of them. Just to say that about him. But no, I think the big thing for me, I like to get out. So it's one of the best things I actually did were let my wife have the dog. So everyone knows who follows me on social media and stuff that is a big part of our lives. Costing us a bit too much money at the minute because he walked into a tree branch. But yeah, he's probably one of the biggest ways to obviously wind down. And I'm sure like if you had kids, obviously kids will come with other stresses as well. But yeah, you come home and he doesn't understand that you've had a bad game. He doesn't understand that you've had a bad day at training or whether you've had an amazing game. He's just happy to see you. I mean, he's too lazy to come and actually meet me at the door, but he'll just lay in his bed and his bum will be wagging when I get to him. So that's a big de-stress. And I think hobby-wise, I'm actually like really into my photography and videography. So I do enjoy kind of doing stuff. I'm doing the vlogs for Puckstop right now. And that's actually killing a hell of a lot of time while I'm injured, actually. It's bringing stuff out weekly. It's quite hard. I mean, you're having to think about stuff to do and what stupid stuff to film. But no, it's definitely that's killing a lot of time for me. It's made the weeks go a hell of a lot faster than probably what they would have without doing these vlogs.
As a owner of a rescue dog myself, and as somebody that is involved in like video creation, I can completely agree with everything you just said, down to the letter. But kind of the last thing I want to ask you, based on the conversation we've had, is obviously everybody knows you as Ben Bowns, the netminder. I believe you have some other ventures that you're involved in. Do you want to just like take a minute to kind of like shout out your other ventures? Yeah, absolutely, go for it, because I mean like you've taken the time to come on the show and give us your thoughts about like your career and everything. Like it's only fair, right?
I mean the biggest one right now is coast to coast clothing. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but I've never been good with a pen. I always had ideas in my head, but you try and put it to paper and it just looks absolutely nothing like it. Try and draw a logo and it looks like a turd or something that I just tried to draw as a 3-year-old. But yeah, so I'm with two good friends there with Hevs and Stu. Stu's a tattoo artist. Hevs is really into detail and the business side of things. So it's they're husband and wife, so they're partners. So that's good. Stu comes up with the creations. We'll give him the ideas. Hevs loves the little details and all the packaging and stuff. So I'm happy to let her do that. But yeah, that's probably my biggest thing right now. That's my biggest kind of time consumer away from hockey. Doing the social media side of things and taking the pictures for them. And yeah, the videography and the photography. I've got two little things with that, and one I work with Helen Brabham, who people will know. She's one of the photographers from Cardiff. If you follow the photography scene within the UK, and we do that. I work with her to shoot weddings, whether that's film or photograph. I'm more of the videographer. She's a photographer, but I'd like to get more into the photography side of things. And then there's also just doing my own little kind of corporate side of things where I'll do photography and videography for my other business, which is Iris Media. I mean, some of those videos are even a bit old when I first started, and I look back up now and think, God, they are terrible. But at the same time, I don't want to take them down because obviously business is at them, and it's cool to see like how you started and compared to what you're doing now. So with these vlogs and doing them for book stuff, it's given me a chance to kind of update my YouTube channel with that. But at the same time, it's kind of a fine line because I don't want people to go and watch like the Iris Media stuff or the Live Through the Lens because it's me. I want them to obviously like the content that I'm putting out. So the channels aren't that big and stuff like that. So it's kind of a fine line. You want people to view it, but you don't want them to view it just because it's you. And it kind of it's the same with Coast to Coast in a way, but that's obviously it's a lot harder to keep a secret. You want people to know it's you and why you're doing hockey related stuff as well as non-hockey. And that's one thing that I really like about is the fact that we don't just do hockey. We're not into these big kind of designs of people getting their faces punched in and blood all over. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't think that hockey's about that. So I like that we do all the clean designs, more like street fashion. It's cool that we're doing hockey clothing that you can just wear anywhere you want. Really, you can wear it to a restaurant if you're on a date. Probably people won't even know that it's hockey clothing. A bit like the Gong Show stuff. Like I love their stuff as well. So yeah, they're probably my three things, but like I said, the clothing one definitely that's probably the biggest thing right now that's taking up a lot of the time, and the videography and photography is just something that I'm really trying to get into.
Perfect. Chris, you don't have anything else to ask?
No, I know. It's been absolutely fabulous having you on, Ben. Thank you so much for taking the time out, particularly because you're an hour ahead of us as well. So it's nearly 9:30 for you. It's been fascinating to hear your stories, and I'm sure our listeners and the people watching on YouTube from all across Europe and America, some of whom will of course remember you from the World Championships, will love hearing them.
That's no worries. I mean, you can probably hear the dog snoring in the background. I don't know if they can or not. No, I obviously got bored about an hour ago.
I think it's all right. I think we've done fine. But yeah, thank you so much, Ben. We really appreciate it. Cheers, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
So yeah, that was our interview with the one and only great British netminder, Ben Bowns. I don't know about you, Chris, but I had an absolutely incredible time talking to Bownsy and getting the chance to talk to him about every single element of his career, whether it be where he is now or his time with Cardiff and the Champions Hockey League. What do you think people will enjoy the most about this interview that we've just done?
I think finding out, kind of seeing the player behind the mask, because so other than like national anthem and what have you, he's always there in full pads and mask on, making some, quite frankly, ridiculous saves a lot of the time. He's made more than a few of those, and just kind of finding out. So all the Cardiff Devils fans in particular, you know, we're sad to see him go.
Yes,
and they'll be hoping there will be a return at some point. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those interviews where, I mean, we could have easily just sat chatting to Ben for about 4 hours. I think.
Yeah.
And, you know, we kind of had a job to cut it down. We got some fan questions in there as well. So hopefully, it was a fantastic interview. Thank you very much to Ben for coming on, and yeah.
And that's the best way to put it. It's like we can't quite put to words. It's like, oh my God, we just interviewed the starting netminder for Team Great Britain that's helped the team get to the position where they're in now, and he really put on a show in the latest World Championships in 2019. Like, we got to talk to that guy for an hour and a half or so and kind of just talk to him about his career. Like, what an incredible opportunity. And like you said, Chris, a big thank you once again to Bowns to give us the opportunity to sit down and have a chat with him for a little while. But I think on that note, Chris, this is a really great place to end this week's episode of the Euro Puck podcast. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. We hope you have enjoyed the show. We hope you enjoyed us bringing on another guest. We know that we've been kind of alternating between guests and more news-related shows, and some people prefer one version, some people prefer the other. But we like to have a bit of variety here. It means that we keep things fresh, we keep things exciting. We're hopefully not going to overload with one side more than the other in the next few weeks. We're kind of going to go back more to normality with the news and the scores and the standings up until Christmas pretty much, and then go for it.
And the predictions as well. I've just literally just remembered. I've got to get those in.
Good idea.
So last week Again, it was a tie at the top. Stash, and Biframig or Henrik, as we said before, each scoring 8 points, so they won the week. Henrik still holding a 4-point lead secured in week 1. Don't forget, with 4 points for a perfect overtime result, it could all change. If you don't already play our predictions game, then make sure you follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, where we post the fixtures that we want you to guess the scores to each week.
Exactly. And now that we've actually finally remembered to do all of our housekeeping, now it's a good place to end today's episode of the EuroPuck podcast. I mean, it's a good thing we remembered, to be fair. But if you want to keep updated on all things EuroPuck podcast, or send us your thoughts, opinions, or questions, either from today's show with Bownsy or for our next show when we go more towards the news-related stuff, then you can send us our thoughts at EuroPuck Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, or you can follow our personal Twitters at OddmanRushYT or at Chris_Gadsby. Send us your thoughts, opinions, questions, anything you want to send us related to the sport of hockey in Europe. And hopefully, if it's interesting, we'll put it on the show. So, yeah, thanks again for listening, guys, and we'll see you again next time. Have a good one, folks.